I need to ask you something really quick. What's scarier than a recession? Most people would say nothing. A recession is bad enough. Jobs disappear, savings shrink, people panic. But there's actually something worse, something that's harder to fix, harder to escape, and that the Federal Reserve is basically powerless against. It's called stagflation. And right now, today, the conditions for it are falling into place faster than almost anyone is acknowledging. So let's slow down, cut through the noise, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening, why it matters to your life, not just your portfolio, and honestly, why I think this one is different from anything we've seen in 50 years. What is stagflation, and why is it so dangerous? Okay, first things first, let me just define this properly because I think a lot of people use this word without really understanding what makes it so uniquely terrifying. So a normal recession, you know what that looks like. The economy slows down, people lose jobs, and because fewer people have money to spend, demand drops and prices either fall or stop rising. That's painful, but there's a built-in corrective mechanism. When prices fall, the Fed can cut interest rates, stimulate the economy, get things moving again. It's like a bad flu, miserable, but you recover. Stagflation is completely different. With stagflation, you still have the slow or negative economic growth, you still have rising unemployment, but on top of all that, prices keep going up. Inflation doesn't go away, it stays high. That combination, slow economy, job losses, and high inflation, is the policy equivalent of a doctor who can't give you any medicine because every treatment makes one of your symptoms worse. I'll explain exactly what I mean by that in a minute, but first, let me show you how we actually get there, because understanding the cause is everything here. The two ingredients that create stagflation. There are two things that create a stagflationary environment: a supply shock and poor monetary policy. Right now, we have both at the same time. Let's start with the supply shock because this one is very visible if you know where to look. The Strait of Hormuz. 20 million barrels of oil flow through that strait every single day. To put that in perspective, global oil production is around 100 million barrels a day. So the Strait of Hormuz alone handles about 20% of the world's oil supply. Normally, around 151 ships pass through that strait on any given day. Right now, that number is down to about 4 or 5 vessels a day. Traffic is down approximately 97%. The ships that are still moving through are either paying in yuan, not dollars, or they're paying what I can only describe as an outrageous toll that will absolutely get passed down to consumers. It always does, you know how this works. And it got worse over the weekend because new participants have entered this conflict. Now, both the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea are facing serious disruptions simultaneously. Two of the world's most critical shipping choke points at the same time. And we're not just talking about oil here. We're talking about fertilizers, chemicals, metals, the raw inputs that everything you buy is either made from or transported with. When those input costs shoot up, businesses don't just absorb it, they pass it on. And that's exactly how you get inflation even as the economy slows down. That's the supply shock. Check. Now let's talk about the money supply, the part that makes me lose sleep. Now, let me show you something in the data that I think is genuinely alarming once you see it clearly. This is the M2 money supply, the broadest measure of money in the US economy, pulled directly from the Federal Reserve's own data. Now, I want you to look at this chart like a detective. Where does the line bend upward in a way that seems unusual? The first moment is right after the Great Financial Crisis in 2008. That's when the US made a deliberate choice. Instead of letting the economy fall into a depression and take the pain, which arguably would have been the right medicine, the decision was made to print money on a massive scale, quantitative easing, the Japanese playbook. Now, I'm not going to pretend that was a simple decision, it wasn't, but my honest view, we chose a slow death over a painful recovery, and we've been kicking that can down the road ever since. Then comes the second moment on that chart, the pandemic. The money printing that happened during COVID was on a completely different scale. Circus level, honestly. I don't know how else to describe it. The line just goes nearly vertical. So here's where it gets really important, and this is the part that makes me genuinely frustrated when I read government reports. The latest M2 money supply data shows the money supply growing at 10.6% annually. The The government's official CPI inflation report says prices are rising at 2.4%. So the money supply is growing at more than 4 times the rate that the government says prices are rising. I'll let you sit with that for a second. I'm not saying the official number is fabricated, but I am saying that those two data points don't exactly tell the same story, and the money supply number is the one I trust more. So, supply shock? Check. Excessive money supply growth? Check. Both ingredients are in the pot. Here's why this time is different from 2008. Here's a question I get asked a lot. Hey, we had massive money printing after 2008. Why didn't we get stagflation then? It's a fair question, and the answer is actually really important. In 2008, the financial system itself seized up. Liquidity dried up so fast that even with all the money printing, the new money couldn't flow fast enough to create inflation. People were losing homes and jobs too quickly. Demand destruction kept prices in check. What's different this time is where the price pressure is coming from. It's not about consumer demand running too hot. It's about input costs, oil, energy, fertilizers, metals, the foundational stuff that everything else depends on. Those prices spike because of supply disruptions. And here's why it's worse. When energy and input costs rise, businesses cut production, slow hiring, eventually lay people off. That's your economy slowdown. But those same energy and input costs keep prices elevated or push them even higher. That's your inflation. Slow economy, rising prices at the same time. That's stagflation, and that's what's setting up right now. The policy dilemma. Why the Fed is basically stuck. This is the part that I really want you to understand because this is why stagflation is uniquely dangerous. In a normal recession, the playbook is simple. Economy slows, unemployment rises, Fed cuts rates, prints money, stimulates growth. Painful, but manageable. In a normal inflation spike, the playbook is also simple. Too much money chasing too few goods, Fed raises rates, cools demand, inflation comes back down. Also painful, but manageable. Stagflation breaks both playbooks simultaneously. If the Fed cuts rates and prints money to fight the recession, they pour gasoline on already elevated inflation. Do you want to see home prices spike again like 2021 and 2022? Because wages absolutely will not keep up. They never do. If the Fed raises rates to fight inflation, they crush an economy that's already being hammered. More job losses, deeper recession, more pain. If they do nothing, we just sit in a slow deterioration, weakening economy, high unemployment, persistent inflation. There is no clean option here. That's the policy dilemma, and it's real. And look, I want to be straight with you here. I'm not trying to scare you for clicks. I'm telling you this because I think you deserve to understand what actually is happening instead of being told the economy is fine. The history lesson and why we can't repeat it. The last time the United States went through stagflation was about 50 years ago. Same causes, actually. Oil supply shock from the embargo and the Iranian Revolution. Monetary policy mistakes. Interest rates kept too low for too long. Sound familiar? So how did it end back then? The Federal Reserve made an extremely painful, extremely unpopular decision. They raised the federal funds rate all the way to 20%. 20%. For context, today's federal funds rate is 3.75%. And what did 20% interest rates mean for regular people? Mortgage rates around 18%, the housing market essentially froze, businesses couldn't borrow, unemployment surged. It was brutal, but it worked. It broke the back of inflation and eventually set the stage for the economic expansion of the 1980s. Now here's the critical question, the one that keeps me up at night, honestly. Can we use that same medicine today? The answer is no, and here's why. In 1980, the US national debt was around $900 billion. The debt to GDP ratio was approximately 32%. Today, the national debt is $36 trillion. The debt to GDP ratio is around 120%. And that doesn't even include the unfunded liabilities. Right now, just the interest payments on the national debt are exceeding $1 trillion per year. The entire federal government collects about $5 trillion in taxes annually. So if the Fed raised rates to 20% today, interest payments on the debt alone would hit approximately $5 trillion. That's 100% of all tax revenue, just on interest. But here's the part that makes this even worse, and most people don't know this. The majority of new government debt is now being issued as short-term treasury bills maturing in 1 year or less. Why? Because there aren't enough buyers for 30-year bonds anymore. So the government is essentially rolling its debt on short-term paper that reprices constantly, which means any sustained rate increase hits the budget much faster and harder than people realize. The 1980 medicine would kill the patient today. We don't have the same financial flexibility we had 50 years ago. My honest take, and where this might go. Okay, this is the part where I'll give you my actual opinion, not just the data, what I personally think it means. The Federal Reserve cannot solve this. Their tools, the ones they've used for decades, are specifically designed for either inflation or recession, not both at once. The only real solution is de-escalation. If the supply shocks ease, if the shipping lanes reopen, if energy flows normalize, that removes the primary driver of the price pressure. But here's what worries me. Even if there's political will for de-escalation on the US side, and that's not guaranteed, simply pulling back doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran holds those cards right now, not us. And I've noticed something over the past few weeks that I think is worth pointing out. The market's reaction to reassuring statements has been getting progressively weaker. Early on, a bullish headline could cause a significant market rally. Now, the same type of statement barely moves the needle, or the market opens higher and fades by close. That's the market losing faith in words. And when the market stops believing the statements, that's when things get genuinely unpredictable. My honest prediction? If the supply disruptions persist through this quarter, we will see stagflation indicators that are impossible to spin or dismiss. And at that point, the conversation shifts from "is it coming" to "how do we live in it?" I hope I'm wrong, genuinely. But I think understanding this scenario, even if it doesn't fully materialize, is something every American should be thinking about right now. Real, grounded, direct. Look, I want to be really clear about something before I let you go. Everything I showed you today, the M2 data, the Strait of Hormuz numbers, the debt figures, the historical comparisons, none of that is my opinion. That's just the actual data. My opinions are clearly labeled as mine. The facts are the facts, and the facts say we're in a genuinely complicated spot. Now, does that mean you should panic? Absolutely not. Understanding a problem is the first step to navigating it, and people who understand what's happening will make better decisions than people reacting emotionally to headlines. That's exactly why I make videos like this. Not to alarm you, but to make sure you actually know what's going on so you can make smart decisions for yourself and your family. If this helped you see the bigger picture more clearly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment below telling me what you think. Do you think stagflation is coming? Am I being too pessimistic? I actually read these and I want to know where you stand. Stay informed, stay ahead, and I'll see you in the next one.